So how effective have you and your organization been at publicizing the identities of the people, the executives, for example, who are behind this? And to what degree can you do that? Like, can you name people today?
Well, yes.
Okay, let's name them.
First of all, I would just say it's not just my organization. I want to say that again. So the secret shareholder, Pornhub, was exposed because the former owner of Pornhub actually came forward to me to help.
Why?
Well, he had ulterior motives. At first, he approached to say he wanted to help. He was called the Zuckerberg of porn. So he's the one that kind of put Pornhub on the map almost a decade or more ago. And he kind of exploded this idea of free porn onto the global scene. And he made Pornhub this kind of household brand where, people are joking about it on Saturday Night Live and wearing their apparel proudly in public. And they had pop-up shops in New York Fashion Week and, doing these campaigns around the world. They spent millions of dollars promoting this image of themselves as this mainstream legit brand. They had an arm of the company called Pornhub Cares, where they would do these like philanthropic efforts to save the bees and save the oceans and donate to breast cancer research and, all of these things that they would do, and they would make massive PR campaigns. So, he was kind of behind that. But he came forward and he revealed that, the man he sold the company to. He said his name is Bernd Bergmer. And he was an Austrian. He was living in half time in London, half time in Hong Kong. And so we found out his name, but then a journalist from the UK went on this hunt for the porn king and he found him. And now he's being sued personally. So it's not just the company that's being sued. Bernd Bergmer. And he's personally being sued. The CEO and the COO, who are also minority shareholders, are also personally being sued because they've been unmasked. And that was a part of this journey.
Anybody being criminally charged in the executive suite?
Not yet.
Not yet.
But they should be. Yeah. And not just in the U.S., like here in Canada. Mm-hmm. Section, 631.1 of the Criminal Code in Canada makes it illegal to transmit, possess, advertise child pornography, child sexual abuse material. An aggravating factor in that is if it's monetized, if it's for profit. Mm-hmm. I mean, this carries serious sentences. Mm-hmm. And there is no question.
But it's not being enforced.
It's not being enforced. And that's the question, is why? Why? Why can't we enforce this?
America's healthcare system is lacking in any real care. Insurance companies regularly deny progressive treatment options, primary care physicians refuse to order comprehensive lab work, and the standards of care lag years behind the leading research. That's where Merrick Health comes in. Merrick Health represents a paradigm shift in how we approach medicine. The premier health optimization platform, Merrick Health empowers you to maximize your longevity and performance with the confidence that comes from having experts in your back pocket. They offer cutting-edge diagnostic labs, concierge health coaching, and expert clinical oversight. They help you achieve your health and fitness goals by leveraging data-driven lifestyle and nutrition recommendations, along with supplement and prescription treatment options. If you're listening to this show, then you're probably a proponent of taking your health into your own hands. That's why we've teamed up with Merrick Health to offer a turnkey optimization package designed for those who want to maximize their performance and longevity with the most elaborate testing on the market. You'll receive extensive lab work, thorough lab reports, video calls with Merrick's health experts, and expedited onboarding. Go to merrickhealth.com/Peterson and use code Peterson to get the same panel and medical oversight I get, and save 10% at checkout. That's merrickhealth.com/Peterson and use code Peterson at checkout.
I think maybe it's because people, I'll tell you a little story. So I was ill for a long time. The first podcast I did when I sort of came back, I was still in pretty rough shape, was with Abigail Schreier, who wrote a book called Irreversible Damage. And Michael Schellenberger, who's a pretty good journalist in the U.S., and Schellenberger broke the files on X that exposed this group for what they were. And then I interviewed him. And he said something very interesting. He said that he had been aware, for example, of the interview I did with Schreier, because that was one of the first interviews along with her book that really brought this to, say, public attention. And he said he just couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe this was happening. If you look into the details of that kind of surgery, it's so absolutely barbaric and brutal that you can't imagine it. The only thing I can compare it to is the accounts that I've read of what happened in Unit 731 in China, which I would not recommend investigating unless you want to be traumatized for the rest of your life, and the sorts of things that were going on in the death camps in Germany. It's brutal beyond comprehension. And Schellenberger basically said he simply couldn't believe it. And I think there are just places that people don't want to look. And why would we look at our culture and understand that 40% of internet traffic is sadistic, criminal, hedonistic pornography? And what does that say about the culture at large? It's a massive problem. And so who the hell wants to poke their nose into that? And so what do? We swallow a camel and strain at a gnat, right? To use the biblical allusion. And we won't look and see what's actually happening. We won't see what's happening to our kids. We won't see what's happening to the people who are victimized by this kind of pathology. It's too much. And so people turn a blind eye and focus on comparative trivialities. That's how it looks to me. And then, of course, people are morally complicit too, because pornography use is extremely widespread. And so if you start to make an issue of it, then you have to examine your own behavior, let's say, in all of its aspects. And that's also the kind of dark thing that people are very inclined to avoid. And so it's nod, nod, wink, wink. This is all cool and fun, and
that's why I think it has to come by force, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to come voluntarily. And I guess, I guess that's a lesson that we kind of learned over the last 4 years, battling the credit card companies, even what's happened like with Pornhub and having to take down the content they've had to take down and whatnot. It's not.
Well, we have another problem too, is that it's really easy for people to be invisible and pathologically anonymous online. And so, it looks to me like this technological revolution has an element to it that is likely. Is it civilization destroying? It might be, because there's always a percentage of people who fall into the psychopathic, sadistic, histrionic category. It's about 5% of people worldwide. You can think about it as an evolutionary niche. If you're depressed and anxious and you just stay at home and you never do anything and you're completely useless, then, that's not a very effective reproductive strategy from a biological perspective. But if you're an exploitative psychopath, you can actually find your victims and you can propagate yourself with some degree of effectiveness. And that seems to stabilize at about 5% of the population worldwide. And so these are people who are classically without conscience. And you could think about them as temperamentally aggressive people who haven't progressed beyond the moral standards of a 2-year-old. And there's nothing wrong with 2-year-olds. But when you're 50 and you're a 2-year-old, there's something seriously wrong with you. And it's almost impossible to describe how dangerous these people are. And I'm afraid, and I think with good reason, that the anonymity of the net and its international nature makes it impossible to hold the psychopathic sadists who are completely 100% not only self-interested, but delight in the unnecessary suffering of others. That's a good definition of sadism. We're not holding them to account. In fact, they're being monetized and promoted.
Well, that's where the solution is. You actually, I think, just nailed it on the head, because how are we going to make sure this doesn't happen again?
Well,
and it's verification. That's exactly where it's removing the anonymity from those who are uploading, and it's also removing that from those who are in the videos.
Okay, so let's delve into that a little bit.